Okay, it's 1 o'clock. We'll go ahead and get started. We'll call the monthly finance meeting of the St. Joseph School District to order. This is a meeting of the Finance Committee of the St. Joseph School District. The purpose of this meeting is to hear presentations, receive information, ask questions, and discuss related topics to this committee. The committee meetings are open to the public but are recorded and posted to the SJSD YouTube page for public viewing. No votes or board action will be taken during the committee meetings. Formal votes are made at either the regular scheduled monthly meeting or a special called board meeting. Thank you. Okay, first thing on the agenda, HVAC Phase 2 and 3 update. Invite Peter Hinkle who is here to join us today to kind of go over where we're at in Phase 2, what the plans are for Phase 3. So Peter, welcome. Drew, thank you.
Thank you, guys. I have Drew Savutis here as well. He's our lead project development manager and engineer on the project. But just appreciate you guys taking the time this afternoon. So as Gabe kind of mentioned, just trying to give you an update on Phase 3, kind of give you a sense of where we're at, where we're headed, some solutions and some opportunities that we've been working kind of over the past few months with Mickey and his staff to make sure that they're getting what they need out of the system, as well as working with Gabe and trying to make sure that from a funding perspective, the ESSER 3 funds align with what the expectations are and how we're supposed to use them. So kind of just without further ado, we're going to go through two separate items, and I know that you've got a solar item as kind of the next list, if you will, and the next agenda item, if you will. So we'll hit that here towards the end, but want to make sure that we've got enough time to run through the overall scope and kind of approach that we're taking within these three high school facilities to address primarily the classroom spaces. There's a few other ancillary spaces we're picking up along the way, but primarily the classroom spaces in terms of what we're trying to add and introduce outdoor air as well as comfort air to that space, so heating and cooling where there currently is none. And then again, that solar option and just kind of a time frame of what the next steps are and milestones that are coming up. So that's kind of the agenda for today. Feel free to interrupt me as we kind of go through this. One thing that Gabe mentioned is, hey, there's some folks who are on this committee that maybe aren't familiar with Schneider Electric or just haven't been super involved from the very beginning. So I want to kind of take a really quick step back and go through the scopes that we've done and how we got to this point just to date. So in early 2020, we were selected as the partner for the district to help identify energy efficiency and capital improvement work. We've done so through a pretty thorough and lengthy capital assessment of all of your facilities that you currently own to date, and provided that back to the committee and back to Gabe, back in probably March, April of last year. Part of that process was also identifying what we kind of called out as kind of the 6 trouble buildings within the district. So you'll see those there as part of Phase 1, and I'll go into a little bit more detail on the scope of work here in just a second. Phase 2 is what we're currently in terms of construction. So that project is identifying and addressing at the 3 high schools as well as Hilliard Tech, just some identified issues in terms of the mechanical heating and cooling system, and again leveraging what we're calling ESSER 2 funds. And it's kind of confusing because there's CARES, ESSER 2, ESSER 3, so forth and so on. But ESSER 2 funds are being used to address the costs of that project that is currently under construction. And again, I'll provide you a little more detail in terms of where that's at in just a moment. And then the goal of today is really to kind of highlight the next phase of work, which takes it from the large spaces that we've addressed in the high schools within this current phase to now going actually into classroom spaces, upgrading those systems and making those so that they've got adequate outdoor air as well as comforted air coming to those spaces. And then I'll give you a quick construction update as far as kind of what we're thinking here towards the end. So just to recap, the 6 buildings that we're talking about, Carden Park, Oak Grove, Pershing Pickett, Rubin, and Spring Garden. That was Phase 1. That just completed about a month and a half ago. And that was focused on, I'd say, fixing some very troubled issues in terms of those facilities, whether it's a few of them had undersized equipment at the time of installation. Others just had a lack of commissioning and appropriate use of how those spaces were being controlled, to LEDs being replaced, as well as building envelope and plumbing, which is more focused on reducing your overall energy expense and your operational expense moving forward. And so you'll see that project kind of on the bottom left-hand side has kind of an overview of a little over $3.25 million in savings over the next 15 years that we're guaranteeing back to the district. And so that phase, again, just completed, and we're still a part of this process. So when we finish a phase of work, even if we didn't have anything else going on within the district, that phase actually goes into what we kind of call our guarantee phase. So we have a group of folks, a group of engineers and a team that sit on the backside of these projects that, one, we help to monitor and kind of see how that building is performing from an energy and an operational perspective, but then also as we troubleshoot. We know that no construction project and no building is ever going to be perfect for the rest of its life. That's just not the way buildings work, unfortunately. Things break, issues arise. So our team actually sits back and works with Mickey and their entire staff to make sure on the maintenance side, as things come up, as problems arise, we're here to help support that and help solve those problems. The phase 2, which we're currently under, again, was really circled around those large gathering spaces within the high schools. So gymnasiums, auditorium, as well as some ancillary spaces like the library and a few other units that were just replaced as a part of that project, mainly addressing the indoor air quality within those spaces. You know, in the pandemic phase, in the pandemic world that we're living in, certainly these large gathering areas was a good starting point to address, making sure that we're bringing adequate outside air where no outside air was before, as well as taking on the Hilliard Tech issues in terms of just aged equipment, as well as a similar issue with indoor air quality. I'll say that the one proud thing that I'll say about this project is just the speed and the coordination that our construction team has had with the district. Originally, we were supposed to be giving these gymnasiums, these large spaces back the first couple weeks of October. After talking through it with Gabe and athletic directors as well, that was not going to work out. So we were actually able, before the start of school, to hand over all the gymnasiums back to the athletic directors, compress our schedule and our timeline, and really just double up on the manpower over the summertime so that we could help them to achieve their goals of being able to provide, volleyball courts, basketball courts, opportunities for kids to be in those gymnasiums once school starts. So it's a kind of a nice little win, and we're still developing and finishing this project. I'd say we're about 50–60% through. A lot of the equipment has been installed. It's just now really focused on not so much the gymnasium spaces and really shifting our time towards the auditoriums, which a lot of that work will happen here towards the winter time when school shuts down. And we've got that 2 or 3 week window where kids are not going to be actually in the space and stuff. Excuse me. In addition to that, we're also adding and expanding the controls. So if you guys remember from phase 1, that was kind of the start of a centralized control system for all 6 of those buildings. This is an extension out to Hilliard Tech in high school. And so we'll be addressing that as well in the 3rd phase as we proceed. So any questions on the past scope of work? Anything on kind of what we've done to date? If you guys have any, if not, we can kind of have Drew kind of take over and talk through the next phase. Excuse me. Okay. Drew?
Excuse me. Yeah, I'm really going to dive into the focus of phase 3, SO3 project and the funding vehicle there. Again, just to kind of piggyback off of what Peter said, the phase 2 was focused at Benton, Central, and Lafayette high schools, but it really only hit about 30% of the square feet. The intent of this next phase of work is to knock out the remaining 70% of the square feet and get it to a 21st century heating and cooling system. Today, as part of our design and development, we are currently working through what is referred to as four-pipe hot water and chilled water systems. Originally when we came up with this conceptual idea a 1.5 years ago, we had a different system in mind. When we came back to Mickey and the St. Joe maintenance staff, many of their issues with our phase 1 were stemmed around the type of system that we had gone with. So we kind of took a different route, working more with a system that their staff is comfortable working with, maintaining, and operating. And I think we've come up with a system that's going to make everybody happy. And that's working on, like I said, these centralized hot water and chilled water plants at each of the 3 high schools. So what you have today at all 3 facilities is the existence of antiquated steam boiler systems, steam piping, and steam radiators. There's absolutely 0 outside air introduced during any of the heating months. Secondary to that is sporadic use of window unit air conditioners, essentially residential type coolers that you would see in your home. Fine to get the job done, but difficult to control, maybe not necessarily comprehensive of the building, of cooling it. So again, the intent is to go with new centralized systems that introduce outside air and can provide simultaneous heating and cooling throughout these facilities. That will be a combination of air handling systems depending on the building, and we'll get into that into more detail here shortly. But essentially providing either new air handling units or new unit ventilators depending on the facility. And when we do that, we're going to introduce outside air, code required outside air, which we all know is kind of, that's a big deal today, but it's also, even outside of a pandemic, it's a big deal for improved learning environment, to remove the off gases, to remove any type of pathogens or anything else that people are giving off in the space, to just eliminate those from the space and provide a healthier learning environment. So this will introduce outside air. All new systems that we install will include an advanced filtration technology called bipolarization. That was present in phase 2 on any new piece of equipment we introduced at that point in time. So we'll continue that practice throughout this phase. And then finally, the last major section there, building automation. Again, we've set the precedent each time of piggybacking off and expanding the infrastructure of building automation system. And again, that's just a fancy way of saying thermostats, right? We're giving you the same thermostatic control system for all these buildings that we expand to make it easier on your maintenance staff to be able to control from a single iPad, cell phone, control station, whatever it is. They can learn that technology and modify buildings accordingly as we get them online. That's the high level. I want to dive in deeper to each of the buildings one at a time. So this is for Central High School. This one is going to be unique in comparison to Benton and Lafayette because of the existence of a centralized house fan system. You know, back when this building was originally designed, the intent was to use this house fan system to provide a form of cooling, because cooling was never the intent to provide in these buildings. So they would use, during the swing months, they would be able to kind of turn some air over and push it throughout the building. It's long since not really been utilized. When the window units were then installed, it was completely abandoned. So our intent here at this building is to reinvigorate this system, utilize it for a lot of the existing infrastructure today. A lot of the ductwork, supply ductwork, return ductwork is still in very good shape and can be reused. The intent would be for us to replace the air handling units, but then install new boilers, new chillers that will supply heating and cooling to these air handlers. We're going to install what are called variable air volume boxes. It's basically just an individual classroom-based unit in the ductwork that will allow it to vary the temperature based on the thermostat in that space. So reutilizing some of the existing infrastructure to provide a 21st century end-use product of a variable air volume system throughout all classroom spaces in this building. I mentioned a new centralized hot water and chilled water plant for the main building. You can see here at the bottom, it's kind of a unique situation for the freshman annex. Economically not feasible to get hot water and chilled water piping out to this annex, so what we're going to do is put a separate hot water and chilled water plant out there for the annex and serve it independently. So same type of solution, just 2 different locations there. It'll get new air handling units as well with bipolarization. And then the gymnasium, to kind of follow the same protocol that we set in phase 2, would have it be standalone natural gas and DX rooftop unit. That way the gymnasiums can come online in summer for a camp or for practice without having to engage the entire centralized chilled water plant.
I have a question.
Yeah,
Will those classrooms be individually temperature controlled or will
absolutely.
they? Okay.
Good point. You're making it really easy on me. So here's kind of an example classroom here. Every classroom, for example, has a new ductwork run. So this is tapping off of existing ductwork. We'll put in new spiral-bound ductwork exposed in the classroom for better air distribution. Today it's just provided via steam radiator here, and for example, maybe a window unit for cooling. Today, this will be the singular system to provide both heating and cooling and fresh outside air. Every classroom will then get a thermostat located on the wall that will control the VAV box back here. So that way, all heating, cooling, fresh air is all controlled via one centralized system with that one thermostat providing the ability to go up and down. Does that answer your question? Awesome.
Well, I think it's also important, something you brought up about the freshman annex and the gymnasium out there. You know, one of the things that we're trying to accomplish is, like an office space, as well as these gymnasiums, even on phase 2 and as we go into phase 3, it's to have some of those large spaces that we know can run independently from the entire building. You know, an office in the summer is probably going to be used a lot more than the classroom is in the summer. So having a lot of those spaces have their own units, whether it's a split system or a rooftop unit or a piece of packaged equipment like in a gymnasium, that allows us to then isolate that, you know, for longer run times, for if we've got a basketball game on a Friday night, we don't need to heat, cool the rest of that facility when there's nobody in there. We should be able to isolate that into an actual gymnasium, so that helps quite a bit from an overall future cost expectations of energy and energy use within those buildings as well. Voice of God is now summoning us.
But, yeah, and that's a really good point. For the most part, what we want to do is we want to put as much equipment as we can on the centralized boilers and chillers, but in those instances where it makes sense to have separate systems to operate independently, we're utilizing standalone systems to limit, to really maximize your energy efficiency, to spend less, but also to, to maximize the number of pieces of equipment that are on the centralized system, limiting the maintenance impact to Mickey and his team. Any questions on Central? I'm going to move on to Benton and Lafayette, and really these are going to be a very, very similar approach. The problem with Benton and Lafayette is they don't have that centralized house fan system in existence that we feel confident in being able to utilize in a similar fashion as Central. So the intent here will be, again, a brand new hot water and chill water centralized plant, all new pumps, all new piping distribution. However, we're going to use what is called a unit ventilator. It's basically just about a 2-foot by 8-foot piece of equipment that's typically located next to a window. I'll just kind of go back and forth here. So next to the window is a unit ventilator. We'll have the 4 pipes running to it again. That way one classroom could be in heating, another one could be in cooling, depending on need. And it will also provide fresh air. The way that we have to do that is we have to cut holes in the wall. So you have to cut in a supply grill on the outside of the building, duct it into these unit ventilators, and then that provides fresh air, cold, and heating to each of those spaces. Again, same practice of trying to maximize the number of pieces of equipment on the centralized system, but in areas like offices or restrooms, we will separate those out so that they can operate independently and not have to run the chiller in the middle of the summer. And that's kind of the intent for the gym locker rooms in the 1961 edition as well, for Benton specifically. I think Lafayette has a couple of instances like that too. 1968 edition is the same instance there. And again, at Lafayette, all new boilers, chillers, pumps, all new centralized hot water and chill water running throughout the building, hitting unit ventilators. And on every unit ventilator, it will come with new bipolar ionization for that advanced filtration too.
Go back one. Any questions on just the generalized scope of work? I know that we talk fast, but if you've got questions, I can understand it at this point. But really the main concept is we're going to get away from individualized units per classroom and have a centralized plant to provide the heating and the cooling. And in the classroom space, you're going to have these variable air volumes or unit vents, depending on the space, that's going to provide that outside air into that space as well. And so it's kind of depending on if you're Central or Lafayette Benton, it's kind of a customized solution for both of those, and really being able to utilize that ductwork in Central is pretty significant because it cuts down on some costs, but also it helps to bring in that outside air to those spaces. In Lafayette and Benton, we're doing that through the unit vents in the wall, which is going to bring in that outside air right there at the space.
Yeah, so maybe just to summarize really quickly, today you don't have outside air being introduced really to any of your classrooms at any of the buildings. That's not up to code. You have antiquated steam boilers, steam piping, radiators, and window units to provide heating and cooling today. Revamping that with all new infrastructure that will last you 20 to 50 years, depending on the components. So that's the intent of this.
Phase 3 complete the entire heating and cooling for the district?
Yeah, so phase 3 would, in those 3 buildings, those 3 high school facilities, you would basically have all new HVAC heating and cooling throughout those entire facilities. There might be an ancillary unit here and there that's maybe 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years old that we didn't touch, a rooftop unit or something, but generally everything would be replaced. You'd have cooling in that space as well.
In those areas, then it'd be, everything else of them would be maintenance of everywhere, and all the schools would have air conditioning
Yes.
at the end of phase 3.
I believe that's a correct statement. All the schools that would have air conditioning at that point?
All three high schools as part of our scope. Are you saying district-wide?
Yeah.
I
I
believe
think so.
I think there's still portions of the middle school. Isn't there one middle school that's not fully?
Bodie, maybe.
Bodie, I think, is the only one that then has a small portion of it that's not fully cool. But everything else will.
And cost-wise, how has the cost come in compared to what, I was here when the presentations were there early on.
Yeah.
How are the costs going? Are you gonna share that here?
You're,
Oh,
please,
Yeah.
you'd like to come and present with us, by all
Yeah,
means.
that'd be good.
You're leading me into the next slide there, so. Yeah, so the costs right now, and again, these are all budgetary estimates, we're coming in a little over $20 million. Our goal is really to start to shave some of that down. So working with Mickey, working with his staff, making sure that any sort of engineering things that we can do, and these are not based on bids, these are all based on estimates at this point. So hopefully as we get closer to that, the bids come in and they're better than what we anticipate. The challenge that we have is even the last 6 months, we've seen inflation creep up in terms of equipment. The bigger concern for us is not so even much the price of equipment, it's getting equipment here on time. I'll just give you an example. We have a project that has a 6-month lead time on one piece of equipment that we're trying to install within the spring. So just to give you a sense of what we're butting up against on almost every project, it's how do you get the equipment here? Costs have gone up, but it's really just a combination of a lot of things that are causing that, whether it's a supply chain issue or it's just a lot of people have through these stimulus dollars, started to make them go to good use, and so equipment becomes harder to find and harder to source. But certainly that's one of the things we're trying to take into account. And construction on this really won't start until the spring-ish of next year, so we'll come back to you all here in December and talk through kind of what that looks like as far as the final pricing. We've got hopefully bidding that will take place here in mid-November, and then we'll come back December, meet with Gabe and Mickey, kind of go through the highlights before coming back to the finance committee, and then potentially an approval here for later in this year, December-ish, at your board meeting.
What's your projected completion date for phase 3?
Phase 3 would be like fall of '23, because we're trying to work around, and we have not identified that final construction schedule, but we have to work around obviously when kids are in the space, and so that presents some challenges and some pluses and minuses, because some of the work that we're going to be doing, it's going to be inside your basement, it's not going to be seen by kids. But when we get into the classroom settings where we're putting in unit vents or VAV boxes, that obviously can be intrusive. And so we'll do a lot of that type of work during the summertime and then come back and actually feed piping and things of that nature during the fall or off hours within those spaces. Any questions on the phase 3 before, Kate, can we go into solar, I guess?
Yeah.
Just lead into it. Can I go to the next agenda item? And again, we'll come back here in December and give you guys more of a firm, this is what the final looks like, and hopefully have some good bid prices by then. Get this a little bit.
What is Dave, what's the phase 3 funding that will be available at that time?
Well, right now, we have placed it in the EPEGS, which is Department of Elementary and Secondary Education website, where we have to list all that, and we have right at $20 million allotted for that, which has been approved. The whole ESSER 3 package has not been approved, but the HVAC portion of it has.
Thanks.
So the other portion of the scope or discussion today, I guess, of the agenda item is on your solar project. So the district has, and these are actual screenshots and pictures of the 22 different solar installations you have across the district. Now these are, if you ask anybody, they've, I think, changed hands in ownership from a private firm about 19 different times, and so it's kind of a difficult task for us to kind of find information, identify where we're at. But kind of the solution we're putting forth today is to address a very quick payback opportunity for you all to take advantage of in getting these systems back operational. Essentially, this Sunny portal that you here kind of see on the left-hand side is kind of your interface to all those different systems. So it runs through a communication portal. It tells you whether or not the system's operational, what it's doing, how it's doing it, kind of the amount of power that you're drawing, so forth and so on. At 10 of those sites, that Sunny portal is down. The other 9 sites, the Sunny portal is operational. However, your inverter is down. And so that's what the picture on the right there is actual inverter. And so when we start to talk about what we're trying to accomplish, you have a warranty period on those systems that runs through the end of 2024, beginning of 2025, depending upon the location. And so what we're trying to do is take advantage of the warranty on those inverters. So where those 10 have failed, or excuse me, 9 have failed, we are, and that's kind of what we're calling it group 1. We're looking to replace those inverters, get them operational. Communication devices obviously are still good, so we can connect those back in. On the additional 10, we don't know if the inverters have failed or if it's just a communications issue. And so what we're proposing there is to put together a scope of work, and we'll provide this to Gabe here as kind of a change order to phase 2 that allows us to go in and, 1, fix the inverter failures that are there, And then 2, hold back money, if you will, for that second group, which is to replace those inverters as well. And if they don't actually need replacement, we would then just do a reverse change order back to the district. And the reason we can't tell you if they are or they aren't is it doesn't just take a drive-by and a walkthrough. It takes an actual electrician to go in, pull the inverter, figure out if it's operational or not. And so it takes time and cost to actually do all that work. And so when we talk about the impact, you're looking for the known inverter failures and identifying what those systems are at around 35,000. Potential inverter failures at another additional 22,650 for a total price for both Group 1 and Group 2 of right around $57,862. And so the thought process there is if the inverters need to be replaced and they're under warranty, you get to take advantage of that. If we wait until 2024-25, inverters are approximately $9 grand to replace. And so once it's out of warranty, it really becomes a pretty significant cost to replace and try to get them back operational. And so as you can see from the savings, if you just add up Group 1 and Group 2, you're right at about $30,000 in annualized savings. So for that less than $60,000 investment, you get your payback in about 2 years, as well as the extended life on the new inverters that are there, which they should last anywhere from about 10 to 15 years, just depending on the inverter type. And your solar panels themselves last around 2025. So you're kind of halfway through the cycle with the panels, but as well as the inverters themselves. This is kind of a start to failure. So that's why we're really predicting that a lot of the ones that are in Group 2 that we can't have access to online are probably failed, but if they're not, we'll certainly provide that as a change order back to the district, a negative change order back to the district to lower down that upfront cost. So I know there's discussion, that was a lot to take in, but thoughts on the solar approach and kind of what we're trying to accomplish in terms of savings back to the district.
What are the warranties on the inverters?
Typically it's 10 years. Excuse me. Good.
We're all verklempt up here about
Yeah.
solar.
Good Lord, yeah. 10-year warranty. And so our understanding is that the solar systems were installed end of 14, beginning of 15. So you got a couple of years left of that equipment warranty. Like Peter was mentioning, 9 of those we have known inverter failures that we can just basically utilize the warranty process to replace. If any of those remaining 10 have failed, we can replace those as part of this project. But if they are not in fact failed, we can cut those back to the district as a negative change.
So the warranty doesn't cover replacement? It doesn't cover
It
labor or anything?
only covers the part itself.
Mhm. Okay.
And it's not prorated.
No. Well, and the hard part is, so when you first did these projects, there was the reason you can't really remove them is Evergy provided a pretty significant rebate and has to stay, I believe, through 2025. And so removing them actually negates that rebate. And so there's concern if you remove them, will Evergy come back and say, even though they're not functioning, right, in some cases, hey, we'd like to have our rebate back. And that's always a big concern. I'm not saying they would or they wouldn't. But you already have the equipment, and essentially the panels are probably the biggest expense out of all of this stuff. So fixing the inverters, especially if they're under warranty, to get the savings back, kind of an operational, provide you guys a little added bonus. Our concern is if we wait till 2024, now all of a sudden it's a rush to make sure we're hitting that warranty timeline. It becomes kind of a cat and mouse game to make sure we're getting installed in time before the warranty actually expires.
Do those replacements have similar warranties or any warranties at all?
Yeah, the replacement inverters will then have an additional 10-year warranty on top of them. And we can help you manage that warranty period. If they happen to fail within 1 to 10 years, Schneider Electric can take on managing the replacement of that.
And what I can do is we can work with Dave over the next week, put together kind of a generalized scope of work so we can have that together for the city, or the school board here in a week or so.
And you confirmed with Evergy that they're under warranty and no replacement.
Well, it's not technically through Evergy. Evergy just is the one who holds your rebate. The remaining of it will actually be centered on the ownership group, which is actually now based out of California, that we've been working with. So just to kind of wrap up, and then we'll kind of get out of your guys' hair, but as far as what we're working on with staff and with the Board of Education, one is obviously going to be on getting Gabe some of that solar information. But then we'll come back and work with the maintenance department here towards the end of November, and then hopefully come back to the finance committee here in December with finalized pricing, updates on overall project costs, as well as a general description of kind of what the schedule will look like for implementation of phase 3. And then work just continuing to plug away. There's a lot of design that goes into this. There's a lot of time and effort put forth by Drew and by a number of people on our team. And so we're still pushing forward and trying to meet the deadline before the end of the year. And the beauty of that is that allows us to start ordering equipment, and as we wrap up phase 2 to go into phase 3 seamlessly here in the springtime. So, if there's no other questions, we'll hand it back to Gabe.
All right, thanks, Peter. Drew? Okay, next, Kenneth Olson is here with Enterprise. He's going to kind of talk to us about fleet management programming. He actually was here pre-COVID. We had kind of discussed this in a finance meeting before. As you know, a lot of our vehicles, as you see them around town, SJSD, are very old, and several of them are falling apart. And so what I asked Ken to do was to come and visit with the Finance Committee today about starting at TMC and starting small with just their fleet of vehicles, and then maybe it can turn into a bigger partnership down the road with the maintenance department and those types of things. What we do right now, just to kind of give you an idea, is the last couple of years we've budgeted a specific amount. This year was $250,000. We let Mickey just go out and purchase $250,000 worth of vehicles. And at the end of the day, we're not doing anything to help ourselves from a savings standpoint, and I think a lease option might be better off for us, and he's going to kind of explain that. So welcome, Ken.
Thank you. Thank you guys for having me today. Today I wanted to cover 3 main areas and then take any questions that you have. As Gabe mentioned, I was out probably 6 months, a year ago, and gave kind of a general overview of the program, but wanted to expand upon that and do kind of a refresher. So the areas I want to cover today are really the structure of the program, the flexibility and strategy, and then the budget impact that we will bring. And again, we're just focusing really on the TMC vehicles right now, and then hopefully we get into the maintenance and then a larger segment as the partnership grows. But to start at the very top, we are the same company and under the Enterprise Holdings Foundation, and you all are probably very familiar with our Enterprise rental car brand. On the fleet management side, our side, we really just leverage the infrastructure that we have, the people, the resources, and everything that we own and operate to help entities as well as commercial clients like yourself with medium-sized fleets. Our niche is really 20 to 300 vehicles. Some of our entities have more than that, but you guys fall right into our average client with 20 to 300 vehicles. So again, from a structure standpoint, my role is getting the partnerships established, working with Gabe over the past year on the financial side. I've worked with Jacob, Drew, Mickey on the operational side to figure out what pieces of the program are going to fit, what the vehicles need to be, what equipment needs to go in these vehicles, really getting this partnership established. I'm working through contracts and board, etc., to get a partnership in place. As we go live, we have local account teams out of Kansas City that will come out and typically meet with your team about 4 times per year. So we'll work with the department heads operationally, and then we'll work with Gabe to show the savings that we had over the past 12 months, and then analyze what does our budget need to be and what does the budget look like over the next coming 12 to 24 months. We heard about supply chain in the last presentation. That's absolutely a critical piece to this time, and I'll dive into that here in a while, but we've worked through some of that, but have to have a very proactive approach in these times that we're in. From a flexibility and strategy perspective, the program is extremely customizable and it can grow over time. And to share a couple of entities that partner with us, Gabe knows the Columbia School District, Columbia, Missouri here. They have about half of their fleet with us today. They use us for acquisition, upfitting, resale, and our funding, and then they also use us for our full maintenance program. Wichita Public Schools, I just partnered with them. They only use us on the vehicle side, and then they also use us for just the telematics devices that we have. Olathe Public Schools doesn't use us for anything besides acquisition, resale, and funding. So all from an operational perspective, all of our entities partner with us a little different. And then I'd like to share from a strategy perspective, Hayesville and Goddard School District, I partnered with them a few years back, and from a Goddard perspective, they went with a very aggressive approach and partnered with us with all of their vehicles within 2 years. And then Hayesville School District took a very gradual, streamlined approach, similar to what we're kind of looking at here. So very flexible in the approach, and really the key piece there is that we're here for a long-term partnership. We want to get established with these, whether it's 7 vehicles on the TMC side, we've got 13 maintenance vehicles. But we want to expand upon that and work with you year after year. We are not here to sell you or lease you some vehicles. We're truly here for a relationship and a very sustainable type partnership. From a budget perspective and financial side, I provided a quote to you on a F-150 pickup truck, and that vehicle is designed on a 12-month term. In the initial analysis that we put together, the 10-year model that we reviewed the last time I was here, we have all different terms in that model. We've got 12 months, 36 months, 60 months, etc. But on that given vehicle, and what we're looking to do for the TMC side is rotate that vehicle out every single year. Okay? I like to give this example because it shows a very fast example of how the program works in full. So we take a $38,000 F-150 XLT crew cab V8 4x4 pickup truck that if you or I were to go out to the dealership and purchase that vehicle, we pay $45,000, $50,000 for that vehicle today from a retail perspective. We leverage your government entity buying power, and we purchase that vehicle for around $38,000. Enterprise is acting as the bank, and we are buying that vehicle on your behalf. Then we leverage our equity lease model to lease that vehicle to you for 12 months. So you get $600 to $700 worth of payments every month for 12 months. And then at the end of 12 months, Enterprise will pick that vehicle up and sell it on your behalf. And I looked at the auction value today for that vehicle, and it was $44,600. We're in a very strong resale market. We don't expect that trend to continue, and we're not analyzing this on today's market. We're looking at historical auction rates, and we typically come in significantly stronger than the auction rates. But that's the example, and that's the concept. So we take it from $38,000 down to $32,000, and then sell it for, in this case, $44,000, right? So again, the concept here is that we leverage your buying power, we reduce our budget as much as possible with the low lease payments, and then Enterprise is selling the vehicles on your behalf and returning that equity to you. It's not a traditional lease where Enterprise would keep the equity. We are returning that equity to you. So what our districts are finding is the key piece here is the budget. The reason we're running our vehicles extremely long historically is that we don't have the budget dollars in place to get a brand new fleet of vehicles every year, every 5 years. And through this type of strategy and leveraging our resources, we're able to help you bring in newer, more efficient, safer vehicles. And then along with that strategy, the operating expenses with your maintenance and your fuel will drastically go down as the program is implemented over the years.
You may have mentioned this. Is there a minimum amount of vehicles required for purchase?
There's not. From a full perspective, we have to have at least 20 vehicles in the fleet to start the partnership, but that's with your current fleet of vehicles, which you have significantly more than that. But no, to get started, the 7 or the 13 vehicles is just fine. Again, we're looking for the long-term structure. Yes, ma'am.
Do you think 10,000 miles is enough? And it says 0 per mile for overage, so what's the charge for the overage of the 10,000 you're allotting?
I do think 10,000 is enough. The average, based upon if you look at the analysis that we put together previously, the average annual mileage is at 7,800. From a over mileage charge, there's no penalties whatsoever. The reason that says 4 cents per mile is only in regards to the maintenance program that at this time is not on the table. For example, if we set it up for a 5,000 mile lease and we had that maintenance program on there, but we put 10,000 miles, we'd have to capture that additional 5,000 miles of maintenance. But in this case, it does not really matter. What does matter is the equity, right? So if we put on 50,000 miles, well, that vehicle isn't worth $44,000 anymore, right? But the equity is all yours. This is a tool, and we want you to, there's no over mileage penalties because we want you to have the flexibility to use the vehicles as needed. Any other questions?
Maybe it looks to me like we should just buy a whole bunch of vehicles and then we sell them and we can solve all the budget problems.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go into business.
Well, that's a good point, and we were discussing that from a cargo van perspective, and if you look at the model that we put together initially, there was a $660,000 savings opportunity along with implementing a brand new fleet over a 35-year span. So I do recommend that over the next 5 years, we follow that approach and we get there. But one of the benefits with this 12-month program on this first set is that we're gonna see a full cycle and we're gonna know how this program works in all aspects within 12 months, right? So we're essentially earning your business there, and you don't have to take another set of vehicles, but we're gonna prove the concept and prove the program out over these 12 months by selling your existing vehicles. This few vehicles we're selling for TMC, running vehicles 12 months, and then selling our enterprise vehicles, bringing those in. So that's one thing that I really like about the 12-month term, because you get to see a full rotation. I will tell you, going back to the supply chain aspect of it, they mentioned 6 months. We're significantly longer than that right now on average. So right now it's taking 12 to 18 months to get a vehicle. There's very few vehicle options at this time. The Ford vehicles, Ford pickup trucks, Explorers are open. So that's what we're looking at right now. The Transit vans, the ProMasters, the Express, they just cut off for the most part. So there's very few options. And then when you think about dealer stock and dealer inventory, there's very few options there as well. So very tough world to navigate right now, but Enterprise has all the resources that you can imagine from vehicle perspective. So the folks that are jumping in and getting as aggressive as we can right now are gonna see substantial benefits come 12, 24, 36 months out, when folks are just trying to operate their entity, right? When it's gonna get tough from a vehicle perspective.
And that's one thing that I wanted to make sure that the proof was in the pudding, so to speak, and that's why I wanted to start small with TMC to see if they can prove that at the end of the day, if they sell these things for more than we're paying, I mean, it's a no-brainer. And so if they can get a resale option on that, it seems like it would be a partnership that we should try to start small and grow.
Yeah, I agree with that. Sometimes when it looks too good to be true.
Yeah. Yeah.
To that point, we do have a lot of other entities here in Kansas and Missouri that have went through this rotation, so a lot of talking points there, but I'm excited to show you guys what we can do for you all as we grow together. One last point, we do have the Missouri State contract along with Sourcewell Purchasing Cooperative, TIPS, TAPS, so from a competitive structure, we have that all in place.
Any other questions for Ken?
How soon would Ford 150s be available?
They are available right now from an ordering perspective. The GM vehicles are all cut off already for the 2022 model year. Typically, the GM would open their order banks in August. We hope that that gets moved up a little bit sooner. Ford is open today. I can't tell you what's going to happen tomorrow. Things are literally changing on a daily basis. Ram is not open their 22 order banks for our government clients, and I don't know that they're going to. We're watching that on a daily basis and having conversations with Ram. But from that perspective, that's one of the reasons why we're hoping we can get this in place and get these Fords on order for you, so that in the next 12 to 18 months they will be delivered. I will tell you, hopefully, for all our sake, in a year from now, 2 years from now, if we get back to normal, this is never the case. It's never taken 12 months to deliver a vehicle historically. And typically we analyze all of the different manufacturers and lay that out. But right now we have what we have.
All right, thanks, Ken.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda, number 4, 10-year budget projection. You have 2 sheets At the top, they'll say 10-year, one will say without 61 cents, and one will say with 61 cents. This is something that was requested from a community patron to take a look at. And so Katie from my office has been working diligently on this over the last month. And I just kind of wanted to give you, now please understand that this is a projection. And, you know, we can't identify everything that's going to happen and all the expenses and those types of things. So we're just trying to give you an overview of where we're at and where we think as an office staff we will be. Before we go through this, I just wanted to let you know that the local revenue, the one with the 61 cents and there's one without, both projections for local revenue is calculated a 1% increase in assessed valuation from year to year. And your assessed valuation went up 2.4% last year, so that's a conservative amount. The current tax rate, $44.37, 44, was used until the 61 cent levy drops in FY 2025, which will bring the tax rate to $376.44. County revenue was left the same. State revenue was calculated assuming the average daily attendance decreasing by 75 students per year. And one thing within the staffing is that does not, right now we're at a greater clip than 75 students per year. This year it's going to be, it looks like it's right around 100, which is a good thing because 2 years ago it was 300. So hopefully we're trending in the right direction, so that's why we use the 75. The federal revenue was all left the same. We don't know from one year to the next, so we just left it the same across. The only change in the expenditure side, we have a 2% increase built in salaries and benefits for expenditures. Now, one thing to keep note of, this is conservative, and if we do decline in 75 students, then we probably need to decline 3 staff members as well, and that is not built into this. So the staffing goes off of what it is today. So if you go back to the 61 cents, after 2024, or you look at the budgeted amount this year is 131 on the revenue and 126 on expenditures, so we're going to be in pretty good shape. Now, one thing that I will tell you, please understand that in my 3 years and this year, we anticipate that we have taken the largest transfer from Fund 1, this is Fund 1 up at the top, to Fund 4. Fund 4 being your capital expenditures. That's about $5.2 million. You'll notice that there is not a transfer built into this. So as you go along, it looks like we're in pretty good shape for 22. We are, and we're going to be able to make that transfer. So we're going to be able to do capital expenditures. Let's move on to 23. So in 23, the revenue goes down a little bit, $130 million, and that loss is the loss of student enrollment. And then the expenditures are $127. But if you take that $5 million transfer, what happens? You end up deficit spending. So you're taking away from the capital improvements that you can make. Go into 2024. Revenue's pretty steady. Expenditures grow again. You take that $5 million transfer, and you're going to be $5 million in the hole. 2025, we start deficit spending without taking the transfer to Fund 4. So as you can see, I mean, in 2022, manageable, we're in good shape. And we're going to end this year in good shape. But things are going to get tougher. And then, so one other thing that I wanted to also show you is without the levy. So if you go to the second page, without the levy, which is 2024, as you can see, you go from $130 million down to $123 million. So you take a $7 million hit right off the bat. Which, if you remember, 4 years ago, we had to make $8 million worth of cuts. That's where that's derived from. That would be $8 million loss if we didn't build in the 2% increase in revenue, or increase in it, you know. So it would show a little bit more than that. So without the levy, we're in trouble. With the levy, we're manageable. for the next 3 years, but as you can see, as you go into the future, some things going to have to change. The school district's going to have to grow, we're going to have to get more students, or staffing is going to have to be cut in drastic measures. Because, my belief is you don't save money taking pencils away from kids. You don't save money taking textbooks away from kids. You save money of people. That's what our business is about. 75% of our budget. So in order to do that, we'll have to be fiscally responsible across the board. So I think this is a document that is very important to our future. But please understand, as you share this, people understand that it is a projection. We're not, we can't predict the future, but we did our best with the numbers that I provided to you.
Hey, let me ask you a quick question.
Yes, sir.
On sheet number 1, or
Uh-huh.
on sheet number 2, is the bottom 2 rows, or is that a reference row? I mean, or, because it says without, on the bottom one of sheet 1, with the levy, it shows total without the 61 cents, and it doesn't show any change than total with the 61 cents. But on the other sheet, it does show the difference. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think it's a formula.
Yeah, it's a formula issue.
Error.
Thank you.
Yeah. But it should really reflect what's on the second page. Those are
Yes.
things there for
Yes.
reference, yeah.
Yep. And one other thing I wanted to make note of on the first one, I guess it's actually on both of them, down below the expenditures, the data source side. Between FY '26 and '27, if ADA decreases by more than 50 students, it's possible SJSD will fall below the fiscal year '06 state revenue, which would push SJSD into hold harmless status. Hold harmless status is a conversation for another day, but simply what happens is your funding in 2006 from a revenue side, state funding, you cannot go below that. That's and that's something that's built into the formula right now. The formula could change by 2026, 27 as well, and hold harmless status could be taken out. What it does, you don't see too many large school districts in this position. You see a lot of the small rural area school districts, and it keeps them going is what it does. In the state of Missouri, it's obviously, from a funding standpoint in education, it's important to keep those schools open in rural areas. And you see, like right next to us in state of Kansas, there was a lot of consolidation. So it really is, once they take that out, if they ever do, you're going to see a lot of small rural schools that will close down. So that's really the purpose. I don't know of any large districts that are hold harmless, but we very well could be one down the road if we continue to lose students.
But only if we lose students.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, what if we turn that around in 2 or 3 years then?
You're in good shape. Yep. Any other questions in regards to that?
Nope, again, hold harmless at that point in time would mean what?
It would just mean you can't fall below the funding that you received in 2026. So it would actually help you. So you go on hold harmless, and then your state revenue the following year, you get what you got the year before. And you get what you got the year before, you get what you got the year before. So no matter how many students you're losing, you continue to receive the same revenue. And please understand that that's state revenue, which is only about 40% of your budget on the revenue side. You have the local percent, obviously, which is another 40%, 50%, and then you have federal funding as well.
That's good information.
Thank you. Okay, if no other questions, we'll move into item number 5, Hilliard expansion update. Just kind of wanted to give you a brief overview of where we're at. I hope to be able to invite Jill Huntsman from Hilliard at our November meeting to kind of give some specifics. But we applied for ARPA funds through the city of St. Joseph. I say actually we partnered with the Workforce Development and the Chamber of Commerce and applied for an addition to Hilliard, which was approved by committee. We're hoping over the next couple of weeks that we'll find something out from the City Council that is set in stone. What that's going to allow us to do is, with the partnerships in place, it will allow us to do an addition to Hilliard Tech Center of about 15,000 square feet and add 2 more programs. I really believe that Hilliard's probably the biggest hidden gem that we have in this community, and we're really trying to ramp up what we have to offer and ramp up our marketing strategies and those types of things, because it's just something that I think we're not taking full advantage of, and I think we can take better advantage of it. And so it's a good thing. You know, what the school district has in that, you know, we told them that we pay for the supplies, and so we allotted $1 million, but it would just be the $1 million that we're putting into it right now from a supply equipment standpoint. So it's not like we're going to go greatly above and beyond, so it's not going to be a big expense to us.
And how much did we apply for? I kind of forgot that.
I think it's a little over $5 million total. And what it is, it's the city of St. Joseph, and then the county is also going to contribute as well. And so everything has been verbal at this point. And you know, I believe that you know, through my conversations with Lee at the county, I'm sure that they're going to come through with their portion, and I'm hopeful that the city council will allow it to go through. But as of right now, there's nothing that's set in stone. I just kind of wanted to give you an update of where we were at with that. Any questions in regards to that?
You said 15,000 square foot.
Yeah, 15,000 square foot. And those numbers were kind of rough. We'll actually build within the budget. You know, we don't know if we can exactly get 15,000 square foot, but I used Universal Construction, who actually bid the last time around for our services that we went with McCown Gordon. Universal helped me put those numbers together, so I do think we're going to be close to 15,000 square foot.
And what are the designated programs you mentioned?
And I don't know. I knew that was. I knew you were going to ask that.
I'm
but
sorry. It doesn't matter.
I know. That's why I wanted to bring Jill to kind of give you guys some specifics. Hopefully, we can do that in November.
How big is the building?
Right now, I'm not sure. I can get that though.
I'm sorry, I just wondered how big of an addition that would be to it.
I don't know if you guys have ever been out there, but what we anticipate is 4 classrooms and then open space. I know that one of them has to do with big mechanics. I'm not sure exactly what it's called, but right now the spaces that we have for auto mechanics and for welding and for those types of things, that's kind of what they're looking at on the addition.
We still do those programs now, right?
Yes. And we're all K-12 now. We used to offer adult programs, and that's all through the university, or not through the university, but through the junior college, which we're actually getting ready to transition from MCC to North Central. All right, number 6, Air Purification Systems. Mickey couldn't be with us today. Just kind of wanted to give you guys a heads up that we're working with Hilliard right now. We're in the very beginning stages. But as you saw the presentation from Schneider Electric, air quality is obviously a big issue. And we received another grant through the health department. And that grant was around $600,000. And so we're in the very beginning stages. We're actually starting at the Early Learning Center. And I believe they're going to be there this week, maybe. Have they started down there yet? You don't know?
Not really.
But Early Learning Center and Hosea are the 2 buildings that we're going to kind of pilot along the way. But you know, thanks to Maria Burnham, who actually filled that out, and we were accepted for that grant. So there'll be grant dollars, won't be anything that's coming out of our pocket. We'll exhaust the $600,000 pretty fast, and hopefully, you know, I'm hopeful that Schneider Electric's total budget will come in a little bit smaller than what we anticipate. And so maybe we could build those air purification systems into that as well. But we won't go over, you know, we'll spend the 600,000 and then stop at that point until we figure out where we're at with Schneider. Cause all kinds of controversy whenever you only do 6 or 7 schools, and then everybody will be wanting them, but it is what it is. But we did have we felt like we had an air quality issue down at the Early Learning Center, so it was perfect timing for us there. Okay, the last thing on the agenda is Apple Bus discussion. Just kind of wanted to, I think 2 months ago, I had provided you with some information in regards to Apple Bus Company, and I told you that the timeliness of it, it really wasn't urgent then. I think we're kind of moving into the sense of urgency, because if we choose to bid it, then we need to get going, because there'll be an RFP process that we'll have to go through that will take some time. With that being said, with the numbers that Apple had provided us, you know, with the 4.9% increase in 22-23 and the 4.2% increase in 23-24, I'm going to recommend that we continue to go on with Apple and accept those that 2-year extension. But if it's the if it's the good of the group and you feel like it's something that we need to go to bid on, then that's perfectly fine as well. We can do that. One thing that I would tell you that I would just be precautionary. If you do go into the bidding, please understand that these numbers are not going to be honored by Apple Bus, and you might see a bigger increase than the 4.9 and the 4.2 moving forward. And you could see a decrease. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I can predict exactly what's going to happen, but there's a market for that stuff, and they know what that market is, and they feel strongly that they're above that market right now, or below that market with what they provided to us, and that's what they're going to tell you. They're salesmen, right? I mean, I get it, but I just would keep that in the back of your mind. And this is not anything that's going to the board this month. It will go to the board in November. So if you want, it'll be back on the agenda for the finance meeting in November. But just please note that we'll need to make a decision, not a decision, but we'll need to discuss that, come out with a consensus of what this group wants. So kind of take that, food for thought for today. And if you want to, talk privately, I'm happy to do so. Just reach out to me anytime in regards to that. But as of right now, that's my recommendation.
The bus issue.
Yeah.
All these things aren't going to be, you're just talking about the bus issue.
Yeah, the only thing, this will be November.
Just the bus issue?
Yes, everything else will be on the agenda for this month. So I'm going to be talking too much at the board meeting on Monday night. Anything else for any open discussion that you guys might have? Yes, Mr. Reader.
I was curious about when the guy was telling us about the fleet. Approximately how many vehicles do we have in a fleet service now?
70.
70?
Yeah, I think we have 69 vehicles. Yes. And right now, they range from, I have been very cognizant in my 3 years to budget around $200,000 to $250,000. So we do have some new vehicles. You'll see them in maintenance. If you notice the ones at TMC, you should just drive by there if you're over in that area and just take a look. It's not good, and it's frankly it's embarrassing. And so we need to do something. But we have around 70 total.
70 total in the fleet or total vehicles in the
Total vehicles in the
school district?
In the school district, yeah. We're not in a fleet yet.
Mm-hmm.
We have some that are 1991, and we have some that are 2021.
From here on, if we went with a group like that, hopefully we could start purchasing or having vehicles that are uniform in color.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to do. And I don't know if you've noticed the new maintenance vehicles, but Casey and Mickey and let's see, there's a couple more that are supervisors right now. They are all uniform, and that's one thing that I told him, because he was just wanting to sell us whatever truck was available, right? And I said, no, they need to be the same color. They need to be the same kind.
So we're going with white, right?
Yeah, we'll go with the white with the logo. It'll be very similar to what you see now. Okay.
Because I'm No, I did this all the time. I have a different kind of question. The community committee, or, you know, you guys are coordinating with that group, I'm sure, that's doing the community surveying.
Are you talking about Creative Entourage?
Yeah,
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah.
That's, I don't know what I'm talking about.
But yeah, we're in the very beginning stages. Actually, today was the first meeting that we've had as a group with the directors did this morning. I know they met with the elementary principals after us, and I don't know exactly where they're at now.
Okay.
Meeting board members.
Yeah. You got a meeting at 2:10, 4 minutes.
Looks like a rep. You must already have this.
Any other questions? If not, I would take an adjournment.
You got it.
Second.
All in favor, aye? All right, thanks, guys. Appreciate your time.